Hello, this is Ernesto Amaral from the Department of Sociology at Texas A&M University. In this lecture, I'm going to talk about towards sustainable development, which is based on chapter 10 of the textbook by Michael and Weber. And as I mentioned before, you should read the chapter in the textbook in order to be able to answer the quizzes of our social change class, because some of the questions in the quizzes are related to specific examples in the chapter that I'm not going to cover here. At the same time, you should read or watch the lecture in order to be able to work on the other assignments of the class. So these are the main topics of this chapter: ingredients of project coherence, what is appropriate to these times, degrowth economics, universal basic income, sustainable development project implementation, re-theorizing economics, Green New Dealism, multilateralism, and subsidiarity. So on the first topic about ingredients of project coherence, coherence across environmental, economic, and social policies is essential for sustainability transitions. Aligning public policies with ecological limits requires democratic participation and political will. Integrative planning fosters consistency between development goals and climate imperatives. Local and global sustainability initiatives must complement each other to avoid fragmentation. So what the authors are emphasizing here in this chapter is that the development and globalization projects, they focus so much on economic growth without thinking about ecological impact. And in order to have a more sustainable societies, we have to think about economic development aligned with the impacts that it has on our ecological environment. And they think about the sustainable development as a way to the future. So that's the discussion in this chapter. And the sustainable development goals include 17 global goals integrating poverty, equity, and environmental sustainability. They provide a shared framework for global action through 2030. Critics question the lack of enforcement and contradictions in growth-oriented targets. So although there are some criticism about the SDGs, they try to think about development at the same time that we have a more sustainable development. It's thinking about the environmental impacts of development. And in the next portion of this chapter, what is appropriate to these times? Present crises demand rethink the dominant development logic rooted in economic growth. Policy frameworks must prioritize ecological boundaries, social equity, and long-term well-being. Climate change, inequality, and resource exhaustion signal the need for structural transformation. Responses must center justice and care over efficiency and profit maximization. And related to this is the degrowth economics. Degrowth challenges the idea that continuous economic expansion is compatible with planetary health. Degrowth economics advocates for shrinking material throughout while enhancing well-being and social equity. Degrowth policies include reduced work hours, redistribution, and ecological taxation. These are discussions that are going on all over the world in different countries. The goal is to sustain life rather than accumulate wealth or productivity. And you have this debate between green growth versus degrowth. Green growth supports innovation and clean technologies to decouple growth from gas emissions, for example. Degrowth critics the very idea of perpetual economic expansion. So you have these two different styles of thinking growth. One side green growth and the other degrowth. The tension highlights differing visions of ecological limits and economic justice. So there is not only one way forward. We are seeing now this debate of how our society can be into the future. And policy innovations is also a topic of discussions here. New policies include carbon pricing, sustainable procurement, and environmental taxes. International agreements like the Paris Accord guide national climate goals. Innovative governance tools promote integration of ecological concerns across sectors. But at the same time, these discussions, they are not going only linear. We see some pushback and people going against governments going against the Paris Accord, but at least these debates are going on with these policy innovations, these new policies in mind, being part of the debate. And one of them is the universal basic income, which offers an unconditional financial floor to support human dignity. Pretty much universal basic income decouples income from employment, addressing automation and insecure labor markets. You pretty much provide a basic income to all populations without asking them to do anything back in condition to receiving this income. UBI enables people to pursue work, caregiving, or education without economic pressure. UBI is debated as a tool for redistribution, freedom, and resilience in post-growth transitions. And the next topic in this chapter, Sustainable Development Project Implementation, or sustainability implementation. Sustainable development requires state leadership, civil society engagement, and regulatory innovation. Implementation involves monitoring, feedback, and adaptability to shifting ecological realities. Governments must align budget, subsidies, and infrastructure with long-term sustainability goals. Public participation and institutional transparency are key to legitimacy and effectiveness. And global governance is also a topic within this debate. Global institutions must coordinate actions across borders and sectors. Challenges include uneven power, corporate lobbying, and weak enforcement. Democratizing governance and strengthening accountability are essential steps towards meaningful social change. And we have retheorizing economics. Conventional economics often ignores ecological limits and social well-being. Retheorizing economics includes redefining value, recentering care work, and emphasizing reciprocity. Ecological economics challenge growth imperatives and commodification. Alternatives stress interdependence, regeneration, and sustainability over competition and efficiency. There are debates about ecological limits to growth. Planetary boundaries define thresholds we must not exceed to avoid ecosystems collapse. Issues like climate change, biodiversity loss, and freshwater depletion signal ecological stress. Exceeding these limits threatens long-term human and planetary health. And within this debate of ecological limits, there is this debate about donut economics. So economist Kate Raworth, she mentioned that economic activity should be about meeting the needs of all within the means of the planet. which is an improvement of growth at all costs. So we should meet the needs of the population, but knowing that the planet has limits. The planet has ecological limits. So this puts, it's different, it's an improvement on economic growth at all costs. Raworth's model of donut economics is an image to support sustainable development. And I'm going to show a figure in the next slide, which pretty much this donut economics has the ring and the hole. The ring symbolizes ecologically safe and socially just space, where the population receives all basic resources to survive. And it's located between the social foundation and the ecological ceiling. The social foundation protects against deprivations. The ecological ceiling avoids critical natural limits. And the whole symbolizes people falling short of life essentials. So our challenge is to get everyone out of the hole, which is the shortfall, while safeguarding Earth's life-giving systems. So not overshooting. And so this is the donut economics. We have here the ecological ceiling and the social foundation, and within the ring, we have all these resources for people to live in dignity, having access to water, food, health, education, income, and so on, and promoting growth so people don't fall short in the whole, but at the same time promoting development that does not go beyond this ecological ceiling, because here we would be overshooting. We would have chemical pollution, we would have climate change, ozone layer depletion, air pollution, and so on. So we should know about ecological limits. At the same time, we should not let the population fall short and not having the basic conditions for them to survive. So our goal is to have people in the ring without falling short and without overshooting beyond the ecological limits. So reframing progress. Rethinking development means moving beyond the gross domestic product as the sole measure of progress. Alternative indicators include well-being, ecological footprint, and happiness, as we have been talking in previous chapters as well. Cultural change is essential to realign values with sustainability. Diminishing consumption and all this material productivity and thinking more about a sustainable world. And in this debate, there is Green New Dealism. The Green New Deal, GND, links climate action with job creation and social justice. It proposes large-scale investment in renewable energy, housing, transit, and ecological restoration. The Green New Deal seeks to democratize the economy while reducing carbon emissions and inequality. Critics debate feasibility, financing, and capability with post-growth principles. And we have some green state strategies. Some states are adopting renewable energy, green infrastructure, and carbon pricing. The Green New Deal aims to combine ecological and economic justice. Political will and systematic change are essential to long-term success. And you have also green investment. Public and private funding must shift towards clean energy, infrastructure, and adaptation to have a sustainable development. Wealthy nations have pledged support to vulnerable countries through climate finance. Investment frameworks must prioritize justice and long-term impact, not just short-term objectives. And you have the shared responsibility. Climate justice requires wealthier nations to take greater responsibility for emissions. Equitable transitions must include financial and technological support to the global south. Sustainability is a collective global endeavor. And related to a topic that we have been discussing about environmental justice, environmental burdens like pollution and climate change affect marginalized communities most. Environmental justice seeks fair treatment and meaningful participation in decision-making. It links ecological sustainability with civil rights and equity. And in terms of ecological debt and inequality, wealthier nations accumulate ecological debt by consuming more than their fair share of resources. They consume more than what they share in terms of natural resources. Poorer nations often suffer the consequence of this overconsumption. Climate change is usually harsher on these poor nations that don't have infrastructure and the resources to deal with all these natural disasters, for example. Environmental justice is a key component of sustainable development. And on the topic of multilateralism, multilateral institutions remain key actors in global sustainability discourse and financing. However, their legitimacy is questioned due to past promotion of neoliberal development models. So, like, for example, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, they are key actors for this sustainable development all over the world. But their history of promoting neoliberal development models poses question on their legitimacy. Climate diplomacy struggles with geopolitical tensions and divergent national interests. Renewable multilateralism must prioritize equity, accountability, and ecological integrity. And the topic about corporate accountability is important as well. Corporations often adopt superficial sustainability messaging without meaningful action towards social change. Greenwashing misleads the public and delays real reform. Corporations act as they are having like some green policies, but these are just all on the surface without real clear addressing root causes of climate change. Stronger regulation and public scrutiny are needed to ensure accountability. So there are several challenges. Corporate interests, inequality, and short-termism hinder sustainability transitions. Policy often favors gross domestic product growth over ecological well-being. True sustainability requires cultural, economic, and institutional transformation. And on the topic of subsidiarity, subsidiarity emphasizes local decision-making in sustainability governance. It supports decentralization, local knowledge, and community-based resource management. Global frameworks should empower, not override, local initiatives and cultural autonomy. A bottom-up approach strengthens legitimacy and responsiveness in development practices. And in terms of community management, communities manage forests, fisheries, and land through traditional cooperative models. Decentralized governance can lead to more equitable and sustainable outcomes. Local stewardship is often more adaptive than top-down control. So you have this opportunity to work more from bottom up. In terms of urban sustainability, cities must reduce emissions, enhance equity, and adapt to climate impacts. Urban design solutions include green spaces, public transit, and energy-efficient housing. Inclusive planning empowers communities and builds resilience. And in terms of renewable energy transitions, solar, wind, and hydroelectric power replace fossil fuels in a low carbon future. Challenges include storage, equity, and infrastructure investment. Democratizing energy access supports both development and sustainability. So ecological democracy integrates environmental concerns into democratic governance. It emphasizes participation, transparency, and ecological literacy. Empowered citizens help steer sustainable transitions. Sustainability is not an endpoint. Sustainability is not a fixed endpoint, but an ongoing transformation. It challenges dominant ideologies and imagines new social and ecological relations. Realizing sustainability requires collective action, creativity, and commitment. So, a summary of this topic, that what the authors are discussing: sustainable development balances ecological integrity, economical justice, and social well-being. It challenges dominant growth models and embraces diverse global alternatives. Real sustainability requires systematic change, cultural transformation, and collective responsibility. So the discussion here and in the textbook is that the development project and the globalization project, a way to move forward would be through the sustainable development that balances all these different aspects of our life: ecological integrity, economic justice, and social well-being. And some questions for reflections that might be helpful for you to work on the assignments for this course. What are the main tensions between economic growth and environmental limits? How do local practices contribute to sustainability? What role do social movements play in shaping sustainable future? How can we measure progress in ways that reflect ecological and social well-being? What does sustainability mean to you in your everyday life? And these are the websites that are listed at the end of the chapter. This link here about degrowth by Open Democracy. This other link about the Global Green New Deal. The IPES Food website. And the UN Sustainable Development Goals website. So thank you very much for watching this other lecture on our social change class. Thank you very much for your attention.